Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the iPhone 13 and see how this particular phone holds up in 2023. Now, the thing I'll definitely tell you is, first of all, the iPhone 13, what a legendary phone. This thing came out in 2021. I was a massive fan of this phone when it first came out, but I feel like I was more of a fan of the mini iPhone. I feel like the iPhone 12 to the 13 was a pretty big upgrade, but the 12 mini to a 13 mini was actually a bigger upgrade in my opinion, and that was just something that kind of stood out to me at that time. Now, I'll go and kind of break down the past of this particular phone for the last year and looking forward for the remainder of 2024 and kind of seeing where this phone holds up. If you do want to pick up some phones that I would recommend buying this year though, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the iPhone 13, on the front, you are getting a 6.1 inch Super Retina XDR OLED display. Now, this display was pretty good at the time. I'll tell you, it wasn't like the best display of all time or anything, but it was a pretty good display and I was like a pretty big fan of it. The advantage of something like the iPhone 13 is that it still has, a pretty thin amount of bezel around it. It's a good display, and because iOS is so smooth, you're not really going to run into like too many like glitches or hiccups that some other, operating systems may have. So even though it's 60 Hz, it still feels, fairly smooth for the most part. You do have the notch up top, which can be kind of a controversial thing. I will tell you, the notch is not that big of a deal. I just upgraded from my iPhone 13 Pro to my 15 Pro, and I don't even really notice the difference between the notch and the dynamic island. It's kind of blended into me so far, so it's not that big of a deal. I still think the notch is totally fine. Now on the sides of this phone, they're complete flat sides, which look very good, not much to complain about there. And on the bottom, you have the Lightning port. Now, the Lightning port is great, but we do have USB-C now. The thing with Lightning is that you are able to go ahead and basically still utilize a lot of accessories and a lot of things basically that are, suitable with USB-C on this one with a dongle. So I think you're totally fine with Lightning right now. I will say the only advantage that I like about having, like the iPhone 15's USB-C port is that you do have, the USB-C accessories that are already available for your device, probably like your laptop or PC or MacBook. There you can just plug them into your iPhone, and reverse charging other devices is really nice. It's a really nice feature to have. But if you don't really care about it, then I think this is totally fine for the most part as well. It's really not that big of a deal, to be honest. On the back side, you have the standard glass back dual camera setup on the top left. In the middle, you have wireless charging with MagSafe capability, and you're getting IP certification on this phone, and there's still a lot to like about a phone like this. I think it still looks very good. I think it still holds up very well from that particular standpoint, and I will tell you, if you're in the market for a phone hardware-wise, it doesn't really get like insane amounts better than this. Of course, the iPhone 15s feel better and more premium, but this is still like a good premium phone, and I'm still a massive fan of the way this phone holds up from that particular perspective, which, like I mentioned before, is very important. Now, moving on to basically the camera side of things, this particular phone on the back side basically does have that dual camera setup. So it has a 12 megapixel wide angle lens and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera as well. And also has that 12 megapixel wide angle camera on the front. Now, the thing I will tell you I like about the iPhone 13's camera is that it was a pretty big upgrade coming from the iPhone, 12's camera at the time. Now, with the iPhone 12's camera, the advantage of this particular device was that, it had a dual camera setup. It was good and everything, but the 13 improved the quality by quite a bit. I don't know what it was, but within almost every single camera, comparison that I did from the 12 to the 13 and all the iPhones before that, I actually found that the iPhone 13's camera was actually a pretty big improvement. And you were also getting things like 4K at 60 on the back and the front of this particular phone. That was very good. The iPhones before it had it, but this iPhone having that type of capability was very nice. But you are also getting another good feature on this phone that has been improved on the newer iPhones, which is cinematic mode. The iPhone 13 did debut with that feature, and cinematic mode was a very nice feature to have. This in and of itself was a very cool thing, but this is a very funny thing as well. Because the thing with cinematic mode was that this particular feature is still basically, I would say, the last big camera feature Apple has added inside of our iPhones. With the iPhone 14s, I don't really think there was like a big debut of a camera feature there. They improved the quality. Same thing with the iPhone 15s. Like, of course they improved the quality. The 15 Pro Max is a much better camera. And the 15s have like twice the amount of zoom as before, like with the 14s. But I don't know, like there's no like cinematic or portrait mode type of feature that those iPhones have. Maybe the iPhone 16s will have it, but the iPhone 13 does have it, which is very nice. So overall, I will tell you, the iPhone 13's camera is still very good. And even when compared to the iPhone 15s, the newer iPhones are better, but this one is still a very good competitor for sure. And I was using my iPhone 13 Pro camera for a long period of time. And I even made so many videos on this channel, but mostly on my second channel with that particular camera and, microphone. Now, moving on to the software side of things, the iPhone 13's software is still fairly good. The advantage of this particular phone last year was that it mostly got all the features that Apple is currently giving on iOS 17, which is massive. But I think the biggest thing on top of that was actually with the iPhone 13 and basically incoming to iOS 18 this particular year in 2024. So the thing you have to remember is that with every single iOS version, Apple will basically go through and basically eliminate some older software features here and there in order for them to kind of update our phone and make it seem like our phones are older. If they're older, they will purposely not give certain features to older iPhones, even if they can support it. With the iPhone 12 was the cutoff point last year, the iPhone 11 was the cutoff point the year before, and the 10R, so on and so forth. The iPhone 13 is probably going to be the cutoff point for a lot of those software features inside of iOS 18. So if you have an iPhone 13 going into 2024, you are going to be in a really good spot, in my opinion. At least for the remainder of 2024 and probably halfway through 2025, most of the features that are going to be coming out for iOS 18, even on this almost 3-year-old phone now at this point, is pretty much going to be getting all the features on that version of software. Hopefully, not every single one, but I would say like 99 or 95% of the features are going to be supported on this particular phone, which I think is a very good thing and a very awesome thing to have inside of this device. So personally for me, that in and of itself is probably one of the biggest assets for this type of phone, is that you're still going to be getting a lot of software features, which is very, very awesome. Now, moving on to the performance side of things, this particular phone does have the Apple A15 Bionic chip inside with 4GB of RAM. Now, this phone's performance, I would say, is still very, very good. You have to remember a few things. The iPhone 15, the latest and greatest that Apple is currently selling for this particular year, that particular phone has an Apple A16 Bionic chip inside. So the iPhone 15 really only has like one generation newer chipset than this thing. And even though this phone is like 3 years old, Apple had like a stagnant type of approach with those chipsets because the iPhone 14 had the same exact chipset as this for the most part. So with this type of phone, you're going to be getting very, very good performance still. Not the best. The iPhone 15 Pro Max and Pro had the best, performance, but this is still a very good performing phone. Another big thing I want to state is that the 4GB of RAM, I've heard some people kind of state, hey, it's not that great. It can have some, basically we're kind of limiting on some, RAM. We have, iPhones that are twice as much now. I will tell you, I think 4GB of RAM is still more than enough for a lot of people. And I think if you're pretty much in the market for a phone that has more RAM, you can always go for the 13 Pro or 14 series or any of those other ones. But I think with something like the iPhone 13, you were still getting a very good performing phone in every single way. And whenever I compare the iPhone 13 against phones like the Samsung Galaxy S23 with the iPhone 15, 15 Pro, 15 Plus, 15 Pro Max, all those iPhones, the iPhone 13 is still giving you very good performance in every single way. So that in and of itself is another very big asset for this type of device. Finally, with the battery life, this thing does have that 3,240 mAh battery. I would say the iPhone 13's battery life is still very good. And although it's not like comparable, it's not like the same as the iPhone 15s, you were still getting very good battery life from this phone as well. So it's funny because what is there to even complain about this phone? Personally for me, I pretty much don't have too many complaints. Maybe the only issue I kind of have is the lack of a promotion display. Other than that, this phone, the fact that it's still being sold by Apple brand new, the fact that you can buy it in the used market, the fact that it's still supported with software, it's cheaper now, this is a wonderful phone that I would just recommend to everybody who wants to buy an iPhone. This is probably one of the most perfect iPhones you can buy for an older device. If you have all the money, obviously go for the iPhone 15 Pro. But if you're on a budget or if you want a really good valued phone, this is a very solid option. I can't, think of a better option than this one. Maybe the 13 Pro, but this is a very good option. I would highly recommend people to buy it in 2024. So that pretty much covers it up here. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.